Now we're going to turn our attention to the Sunday papers, so I'll run you through the back pages first of all. And where are we here? Sun Sport yesterday, and the Dubs there in the top corner. Dubs pair in semi-scare. Desi's aces busted, so he's revealed that Connacht and James McCarthy in a race against time to be fit for the All-Ireland semi-final on July 10th. He refused, Farrell, to reveal the seriousness of the issues, but admits their crunch last four clash, says Jason Byrne here, against Kerry or Mayo might come too soon for the pair. Beneath that you'll see a picture of Wayne Rooney looking like he's at school. So class Roon. Wazza needs badges for top job. Obviously you might have seen Wayne Rooney left Derby on Friday, which surprised everybody at the club, but he's going to spend his time now completing his pro licence. That is the plan for Wayne Rooney in the short term. We have the Sunday Times, and it's a shot yesterday of Cork's Paul Ring trying to block Sean Bugler at Croke Park. Semi-detached, Dublin too strong for Cork, while Derry brush aside Clare to reach All-Ireland Senior Football Championship last four. Beneath that, Jonathan Northcroft has Ten Hag digging in to land 70 million de Jong. This is Manchester United very much at the insistence of their new manager pushing the boat out to get de Jong. Barcelona want 80 million euro or so, or 85 million. United are going with 80 million, which it seems will get the job done. So it seems 80 million euro is good enough for Barcelona. So that's the priority for Manchester United at the moment. And then David Walsh here on the front page, Ryder Cup exclusion for Saudi golf rebels. So it does seem as if the DP World Tour are not too far away from banning the LIV Golf DP World players from Ryder Cup action. They banned them initially for a tournament or two, and there was a £100,000 fine, but it seems that as the LIV Golf events continue and the European participation continues in those events, the moves against them will grow and culminate in Ryder Cup ban maybe. Mail on Sunday, Deja Blue, ominously familiar feeling for Dublin's rivals as Farrell's men crank it up in Croker. They really were in third gear, to be honest, Dublin against Cork, as we've mentioned already, 21 points to 10. We have the front page of the Sunday Independent. Again, Kicking Kings, Rocks, Freeze, see Dublin into semis. Clare crushed by Classy Derry. That's Dermot Crowe on the front page of the Sunday Independent. Sunday World. Again, it's Rock Stars. Dean and Dubs cruise to victory against Rebels in Croker. 21 points to 10, the final score there. And on the front page of the Sunday Independent main section, we have Mark Tighe, formerly of the Sunday Times, now with the Sunday Independent. And this is John Delaney once again on the front page of main section, revealed the emails Delaney's attempting to conceal, which we might start with in just a moment. Very happy to say Cliona Foley, journalist and broadcaster here in studio. You're very welcome.
You too. And
Tommy Martin of Virgin Media Television and the Irish Examiner with us as well. Tommy, great to have you in.
Thanks, Joe. Good
in shorts as well, the summer feeling.
Yeah, why not?
Summer shorts and rain gear, I think is how you've
you don't know what I'm wearing under this desk though.
So
their fashion.
John Delaney on the front page of the main section revealed the emails Delaney is attempting to conceal. And this is Mark Tighe here. We are now in the midst of a 2.5-year legal battle between the Office of the Director of Corporate Enforcement and John Delaney. And really what's happening at the moment is legal argument over emails and whether or not these should be taken into evidence. So 270,000 emails have been seized. Can you imagine the workload here to go through 270,000 emails? So it seems there is contention over 1,123 of those emails and a small number as well of hard documents over which John Delaney has maintained a claim of legal privilege. So, in effect, the documents John Delaney is seeking to shield include hundreds of emails with former FAI executives Ray Walsh and Carl Heffernan. And court filings show Mr. Delaney is claiming he was advised in some of these emails on family law matters, on the purchase of a €1 million house in Aughrim, County Wicklow. And his argument is that many of the mails are linked, for instance, to his divorce case, which could return to court. So this upholds his litigation privilege claims that these emails, and I'm no lawyer, but these emails could be used again in court down the line, therefore they remain privileged and they should not be part of the ODCE investigation. And in effect, the judge has to decide whether John Delaney is correct in this matter or the OCDE do have access to these 1,123 emails. That seems to be it in essence.
Yeah, well, it was as journalists, I think what struck us about it was because he lists 78 of the legal cases, and true to sports journalists, I think we all had a different number. I reckon there was 41, somebody else said 38, but of the 78 cases, they're nearly all cases involving media. And I know people used to always argue or say, why did a lot of the stuff not come out before? But this probably does reflect the level of cases and legal threats that were going on all the time for quite an extended period. So it'd be fascinating if they do come out eventually. The one thing that interested me in this, and obviously Mark Tighe is a big signing for the Sunday Indo. He's like a premiership signing for him, isn't he? Really, given all the work that he's done on this. But what interests me is that he says that Delaney now runs a consultancy business, Delay Limited, in London, and is also trying to shield a number of emails with Finance One, a financial advisory firm that advised on, quote, refinance of personal business, a property purchase, and a company called Spinel Crest. So it's that sort of, granular detail that Mark Tighe did so brilliantly and made that book such forensic investigation, such a brilliant read at the same time. But this is very much mired in legalese.
Yeah,
and I'd say a lot to come.
And who knows how significant these 1,123 emails are. So John Delaney is claiming, for instance, that in some of these disputes there is contention between the FAI and John Delaney as to who's responsible for the fees, for instance. So even though some of these cases may be settled, his claim is they are still potentially alive and therefore litigation privilege exists. But you do read through a lot of the 78 cases he's listed, and it's John Delaney versus Goal.com 2016-17, John Delaney versus The Journal 2016, John Delaney versus The Examiner 2016, versus Independent Newspapers 2016, versus The Daily Mail 2016, Sports Joe 2016, The Limerick Post, Prime Time in 2013, newspapers, Independent Newspapers 2013, Daily Mail and Irish Times 2014, Irish Times 2011, Morning Ireland of RTE, John Delaney, Independent Newspapers again 15, The Journal 16, You Boys in Green in 2014, the Waterford local radio station 2016, The Sun, Balls.ie, more Sunday Independent investigations, Evening Herald 2012, Sunday Times 13, Sunday Times 16, John Delaney versus Independent Newspapers 2016, the Irish Daily Star 11, Sports News Ireland 2011, Irish Daily Star 14, Irish Daily Mail 2014. I could keep going. I'm labouring the point slightly, but it is an extraordinary litany.
If they say that legal actions are the Oscars of our trade in the media, this is like the glitziest award ceremony you're ever likely to see, because the amount of media organisations that are listed there. So I suppose there's a couple of things that stand out. Obviously, this is all in the hands of Justice Leonie Reynolds, who will make the decision as to whether to come down in favour of John Delaney, that these emails should be not included in the ODCE's investigation because of their links to ongoing legal cases and family law situations that may become active again. The other thing is that a lot of them are correspondence involving FAI staff members. Ria Walsh, who became the interim CEO, and Carl Heffernan, who was a commercial director. And it kind of underlines, whether rightly or wrongly, whether the entanglement of FAI personnel in Delaney's own business and legal affairs, whatever the nature of the correspondence was, and all that will become apparent if the emails are released. But just how the overall point about this, and the fact that Mark Tighe and Paul Rowan opened their book with the famous birthday party, was that the FAI and John Delaney, in Delaney's eyes, had come to be seen, and certainly with the people around him, come to be seen as one and the same. So hence why I guess this is proving so hard to disentangle for the ODCE and the courts. Yeah.
Not much more we can say about the situation, but certainly a 2.5 year legal tussle and counting is very much the case in that investigation. A lot of golf in the Sunday papers this morning, some very positive and some very much about the LIV Golf situation and how toxic that war really is becoming in many ways. If you're a golf fan and you're looking for something which is enjoyable and feel good, then I suppose the win of Matt Fitzpatrick at the US Open last week, and Billy Foster, his caddy as well, is very much to the fore on that front. David Walsh chats with Billy Foster, who's been a caddy for a very, very long time, 40 odd years, and famously never won a major, and some nice anecdotes from Foster down the years.
Yeah, there's some. I mean, I think we've said before in here, you really would love to see a really good book by a caddy. I've always said it's one of those books that's really missing something that's really, really honest. But there's a great line in this. Obviously, the headline is Matt treats me very well as a human being, not just as a caddy. But it also encompasses obviously the time that he spent with various other high-profile golfers, and I just loved. And Dermot Gilleese covers that as well in the Sunday Indo with Garcia and Darren Clark and Ballesteros. But there's a great line from Foster. He said they were all different levels of psychopaths you're working for. So you have to adapt, because what you say to Sergio Garcia, Darren Clark will hate. What you say to Darren Lee Westwood won't like. So you have to suss it out very quickly. And it is an intriguing. I mean, he talks here about making the decision about the 3-wood on the 18th tee last week, and it going wrong, hits the bunker, and you know, the insight that he gives is brilliant. He's walking down as they leave the tee. He's walking down thinking, why did you open your mouth? Why did you make him, play that? You could have just cost him the US Open. And Foster turned around and said, Billy, that was the right decision.
Fitzpatrick said it to him.
Fitzpatrick he says it was a 3-wood.
That was
now
a
let's get on
classy
with
touch.
It. That is in that moment, that is an incredible thing, and that's why you can see that. And Dave Walsh has another piece as well, actually, on Fitzpatrick as well. They're just saying he's quite unusual kind of guy. He's very, very straight up, very kind of honest, very decent with people.
If you didn't like Matt Fitzpatrick after the scenes afterwards, you'll love him even more now as a person. It's great. It's a great piece. As you say, as Cliona says, with the examples from working with Seve and 1995 Masters, where he called a club wrong, and himself and Ballesteros just went absolutely nuclear with each other, and the difficult personalities that he's worked with in the past. And then that story about last Sunday night, but he says the one thing I would take from Fitz is the massive mutual respect we have for each other. He's a very polite young man who looks at me and goes, well, Billy's been there and done it, and he shows me a huge amount of respect, and I show him the respect he deserves. He treats me very well as a human being, not just as a caddy, which seems like, wow, he treats you as a human being. Is that an amazing rarity in golfer caddy relationships? But it's maybe it's a small thing to note as a positive from Fitzpatrick's point of view.
And in Dermot Gilleese's piece, he does a nice piece as well, but he says, he makes a very good point, and he says, the 40 years of Open Championship, he said it has to be tempered with an awareness of an outstanding career in which 10% of serious winnings have amounted to very satisfactory earnings. You know what I mean? So they're, at that level, they're well paid, but the pressure is massive. And if you've had the big instance that he's had, then clearly when it turned right, and just the scenes and Zalatoris obviously responded very well, and Zalatoris' family responded very well. Everything was just it just worked out
it was
nice.
one of those moments that sometimes with golf you kind of go, oh, it's all a bit overly sort of oily and but it was just really nice the way it was done. And obviously the Sky Sports thing, they were conscious of being a British broadcaster. We most of us would have been watching it on Sky, that they kind of did focus a lot on the Billy Foster. I think maybe because they got Foster greenside right away, whereas they were probably third or fourth in line to get Matt Fitzpatrick. But it was, they obviously, all the people working on that coverage have been around the game a long time to know that is great for Billy as well.
On that point in 19, I was fascinated by that, because it gives you an example of just how difficult it can be, a dynamic. So all week Fitzpatrick saw the 18th as driver, and Foster definitely thought it was 3 wood. You run out of fairway, but it seems the agreement they reached was, Foster said, okay, if you want to hit driver, you hit it, and we don't want any doubt in your mind when you're hitting the shot, which makes sense. But then
they talked about it before.
David Walsh says Fitzpatrick hit driver, he played the hole in 2 over par across the first 3 days. So then they get to 18, and that's where Foster says, what do I do here? And he says, I stepped up and said, Matt, it is a 3 wood. It's going to be a 9 iron in. Just get it in the fairway, 3 wood, and then it's a 9 iron. And Fitzpatrick says, okay, 3 wood. And then hooks it into the bunker, which is more likely to happen with a 3 wood than with a driver. And you can imagine Foster thinking, oh my God, what have I done here? That's why it was such a classy thing for Fitzpatrick to turn around and say to him, it's okay, it was a 3 wood, that was my fault to put it in the bunker.
Walking up to the next shot.
You're entitled to be angry at that point.
Well, I mean, and obviously the Seve example from the Masters in '95, it's Seve's turned around, and Seve's made a mess of the next shot as well, and he's turned around and going that's all your fault, because that's what he needed to do to get. And it kind of this is such a great piece, because it sort of it's a great nice case study of the caddy-golfer relationship, because it's kind of like, if you think of a golfer as an individual sports person, but the caddy is almost like he's a part of the golfer's brain, essentially there. Like you see Jordan Spieth and his caddy in that sort of relationship. That's kind of a great example of, that's like an internal monologue.
They never stop. They never
like
stop.
an internal conversation that you might have if that other individual sports people have with their own conflicting views and their own sort of arguments. Will I take a 3-wood or will I take a driver? But now you've got these two human beings who are essentially the one sort of unit, and yet if something goes wrong, then there's a fracture there. And
caddies are tacticians, psychologists, coach. They're a bit of everything. Punch bags very often on the big occasions.
The postscript to the big argument with Seve is that it seems they've been working together 5 years at that stage, and Foster on the 18th tee, when Seve is still going on about it, you messed up, but that's all your fault. And so he says, I effing heard you, all right? And then David Walsh says, Ballesteros is shocked. Playing partner Ray Floyd and caddy Steve Williams stand silently to the side, uneasy witnesses to an ugly family row. 4 days later, Foster received a letter saying his services would no longer be required by Ballesteros. 5 years together, done.
I wonder, does it get to a certain point? It always reminds me of rally drivers. You know, I can't remember. There was an Irish rally driver who had a bad crash at one stage and had worked with his navigator for years, but after that they couldn't work together because there was just that tiny little break of trust.
It's a trust thing.
It was in that moment of driving. He couldn't be like, are you sure about this? Because so I guess maybe it's the same with a caddy golfer, obviously with less serious consequences, but that you can't be sort of questioning, or else, certainly the relationship can run its distance if something like that happens.
I think the only book I don't know whether you can remember, the Lawrence Donegan
Four Hour in the Soul.
It was a great book. But when he was with the Journeyman, it was different, but it was still really, I thought, really interesting.
I suppose he wasn't a career caddy. He was more.
Yes, he was in it just to write the book. Exactly.
For a year. We had him on the golf podcast recently, and it was a fairly grizzled, hard-living caddy fraternity then. I think it's changed a lot now. They're all professional caddies, like you think of Michael Greller on Jordan Spieth's bag, or Colin Byrne, of a different vibe. I think
different era,
these lads were like 10 to an apartment and just moaning about how much they hated their player. Like, my guy's useless. They got to get rid of him. This kind of a culture.
So you're saying all caddies are in the gym now?
But also the Rick Riley book is brilliant. That Rick Riley golf book is brilliant because he has all the caddy lingo of what they use against the golfers as well and what they call them as well. So there is that whole grizzle thing going on as well.
Still, I think honestly the caddies now are very professional. And it was one of the explanations given by an agent I was talking to as to why so many of the caddies get people in their own family or their own circle on the bag, is that they look at the fraternity that was there and they don't like the culture. Actually, fairly or otherwise, but they have a perception that it wasn't as professional.
They want to move away from that.
But considering like Steve Williams was like the highest paid.
Well, he was
if that's the word in New Zealand, like there has to be a professionalism.
It's probably kind of like if you see Drive to Survive, the Formula One drivers have the performance coach who appears to be just kind of there to sort of spot them in the gym and tell them they're great when they're getting kicked off Mercedes or whatever is happening. Like, they're kind of just around cheering them up, and I'm sure
that professionalisation of caddies as well is reflects everything in the sport, doesn't it? It reflects the science that's brought into golf now, and he's talking even so much as well about Fitzpatrick, what he does on that's an interesting element of it as well. I think what
very
Fitzpatrick does on the practice,
because you would notice when Fitzpatrick walks down a fairway, he's always writing something after a shot. So Billy Foster is saying effectively, even in practice and certainly on the golf course, he notes down every single shot. So Foster says if you watch him, he'll hit one in the left rough, he'll measure the distance exactly from the middle of the fairway, and he'll say, right, that's 17 yards off the middle. Every detail goes on a spreadsheet and then it spits out the data. And then over the last few weeks we've changed distances because of the way he's hitting it and so on. So
I thought it was really interesting.
They weren't doing that 10 years ago, certainly, let alone 2030. We will, if it's okay, go to Croke Park for a moment because it's half time between Galway and Armagh. James O'Donoghue watching this game. I've certainly lost track of the last 5-10 minutes, James, so bring us up to speed. Oh, we'll get hold of James in just 1 second. He's lost track of things too. We'll take a short ad break. We're back with more in the papers, and we will get the half time from Croke Park with James O'Donoghue in just 1 second.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Have you ever heard of SME Day? Well, now you have. This weekend, News Talk are celebrating small businesses who made it big with a little help from An Post Commerce. With an innovative range of parcel solutions and direct mail advertising, On Post Commerce can help your business find success. And they've given us a 13-inch MacBook Pro to give away to help an SME manage orders and deliveries to start your success story. So, listen in to News Talk all weekend or check out newstalk.com/SME to enter. It's all with thanks to On Post Commerce, celebrating SME Day, Monday, June 27th on News Talk.
Looking for a great value break in Ireland this summer? GoBreaks.ie will find the best hotel deals for you from just €85 per night.
Go Breaks!
The Harvey Norman Big Sale ends soon, with big savings on TVs and home appliances, like the LG 65-inch QNED Smart TV with stunning picture quality, now €1099. Save €230 on the Samsung 2-in-1 washer-dryer with 5-year warranty, now €699. Or save €150 on the Sage Barista Touch Coffee Machine, now €1099. Get our best prices guaranteed at the Harvey Norman Big Sale, in-store and online. Don't miss out.
Love a space to call your own. Live in the better built surroundings of a Glenveigh home.
Love having a sense of place. And live for shaping it from the get-go.
Love green spaces and the joy of outdoors. Live where lower environmental impact is a way of life.
In a home built more sustainably for comfort, quality, and for people putting down roots just like you.
Love where you live. Community inspired and shaped by you and Glenveigh.
Home of the new.
Guaranteed Irish business members continue to sustain jobs and communities across Ireland.
Pipelife Eco, Ireland's leading designer and supplier of thousands of renewable heating solutions. Established in 1970, Pipelife Eco is your one-stop shop for complete renewable heating solutions. From market-leading products, free initial advice, through to bespoke design, final commissioning and technical support. To find out more, visit their website www.pipelifeeco.ie. So look out for the G, guaranteedirish.ie. All together better.
It's over.
Go, don't look back. Go get your life back on track. Though there's hurt, though there's pain, this car can't compete with the dream. I drove you away, I wasted your time. You told me we've come to the end of the line.
Break up with your car. Love 20% off fares with Iarn Road Éireann.
Part of the Transport for Ireland network.
What does it take to be the best? A healthy, balanced diet and active lifestyle is a great way to start. John West tuna is naturally high in protein and vitamin D, supporting the development and maintenance of muscles and the immune system. And speaking of support, John West is proud to once again sponsor Féile Pananog and Féile na Nail. We'll be supporting all the under-15s playing in Féile this June and July. John West, eat strong, go strong, train strong.
Inside your Volkswagen is something precious. It is engineering, genuine parts, technical expertise. It is your Volkswagen's DNA. It is so precious that 8 out of 10 Irish drivers would pay more for a Volkswagen serviced by Volkswagen expert technicians. Help protect your Volkswagen's DNA and its resale value. Book your classic service from only €199 at volkswagenservice.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
Volkswagen. Brave. It lives inside every business owner. It's what keeps businesses going and growing. At AIB, we back Brave through cash flow solutions like asset finance, which helps your business spread the cost of essential equipment with 100% financing, leasing and hire purchase over a term that suits you. Talk to us today. AIB, we back Brave. Lending criteria, terms and conditions apply. Over 18s only. Allied Irish Banks PLC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Now you're very welcome back. We're chatting through the Sunday Papers. Let's check in though, Croke Park. James O'Donoghue has watched that first half. We knew it would be close, James. 7 points apiece.
Hi, Joe. Yes, 7 each. It's very interesting, I must say. What happened was Galway were 3 down, 7-4, and they were under a lot of pressure. And Shane Walsh got a free around the D, shooting into the canal end. And he went down injured with an ankle injury. He stayed down for about 2 minutes. He got up and kicked the free, and Galway settled, and next thing it was 7-all. They just managed to get a foothold in the game and took the sting out of Armagh's play. And we saw that by Galway against Mayo as well, where they were They were under pressure from Mayo. They got a purple patch, and Galway played very tactically and with good game smarts and had a couple of injuries at the right time. And I think that's what Shane Walsh was doing there. He just took the sting out of the play, let Galway settled, they kicked the free, and next thing they're 7 each, whereas the tide was completely against them at the time.
Galway absolutely will be the happier in the dressing room at that scoreline.
100%. I was just thinking what our manager's saying to their players at the moment. McGeaney will probably be saying to the lads, relax, you're the better team, you're playing good football, there's goal chances there, we'll stick 1 or 2 in the second half, just relax. Whereas Joyce will be going into the Galway dressing room giving them a rollicking. He'll be saying, lads, we haven't even played yet. So it's still such a hard game to call, because you'd argue that Armagh are the better side, but they've left a lot of chances after them in that half.
And goal chances at that.
Yes, there was one incident where Rian O'Neill gave an absolutely delicious pass into the penalty spot to Nugent. That's how deep he was inside. He was on the penalty spot. He had a runner in McCabe, the centre back for Armagh. He turned him down, and he went for the goal himself. I've been there. He kind of used the centre back as a decoy, probably because he was a centre back. If it was Rian O'Neill coming off him himself, he probably would have given it back to him. But he decided against it, turned inside in the penalty box himself, but he was swallowed up. Galway came back and got a point off it. Tierney kicked a great score with the left. So those chances in these big games, you need to take them. He missed the goal. Galway come down, get a point and level it up.
And James, I just got a glance at the scores there for both sides. It looks like the 7 points fairly evenly distributed. No one's having a virtuoso display and kicking 5 points here.
No, nothing yet. That said, I'm expecting Shane Walsh to come out. He's getting a lot of ball, but I expect him in the second half to be coming out now and kicking a few scores. I think that down into the hill end is probably the easier goal to kick into, so we might see a performance from Shane Walsh in the second half. But you're right, no one has taken that game. Like we said before the game, someone needs to take this by the scruff of the neck and kick 4 or 5 from play. Be interesting to see, can someone do it in the second half.
And who's dominated possession?
Who's which?
Who's been on top in possession terms?
It's a funny one, because both sides are actually dropping back. So at times Armagh have held the ball for long spells, but when they've looked for the kick inside, it's been on, but the execution has been off, so they've been turned over there, and Galway have had a very quick counter-attack. So in the first kind of 15 minutes, you'd have to say Galway had a lot of ball, but we're doing nothing with it. But that was roles reversed in the second 20 minutes of the half, where Armagh had a lot of ball but couldn't do anything with it, and Galway broke and got quick scores. But I honestly think the most important thing that happened in that half was Shane Walsh going down with an ankle injury for 2 minutes, taking the sting out of the game. All the Armagh players were walking around, hands on hips, head down, kind of just complete lost momentum, and now it's 7 each.
Interesting. And about what minute did Walsh do that?
It was 7-4, so I think there was about maybe 12 minutes left in the half, but it could have easily been slipping away from them. They hadn't got a grips to the game at all. What Armagh were doing was getting the ball up to the 45 and putting lovely ball inside and creating chances. And after that, Galway just seemed to be a bit tighter at the back. They kind of put their defenders more in central areas rather than out wide, and they've stopped those balls going in.
Okay, James, great stuff for the time being. Thank you. That's James O'Donoghue at Croke Park. 7 points apiece between Galway and Armagh. We're reviewing the Sunday papers here with Tommy Martin and Cliona Foley. Just on the golfing theme, we were touching on that Billy Foster interview with David Walsh before the ad break there, and a story which certainly caught your eye, Tommy, on the front page of the Sunday Times. Ryder Cup exclusion for Saudi golf rebels. So the sanctions, it would seem that the DP World Tour will impose on those LIV Golf players are going to incrementally build up very, very soon to a Ryder Cup ban. And I mean, what's doubly interesting is, it seems speculation, Henrik Stenson's management team have been in talks with LIV. This is the Ryder Cup captain next year.
Yeah, that would be hugely significant. There's this story of David Walsh in the Sunday Times, and also James Corrigan has a story about it, and a lot of it around to what degree will the LIV Tour, will the Saudis basically cover the cost of the fines? And that's an interesting one. In the James Corrigan piece, there's a quote from an agent of one of the LIV players who appeared at Centurion to say they had yet to hear from LIV, because LIV had obviously promised them at the time, listen, we'll cover any fines you get. And the quote is, we thought LIV would make a big play of this and come straight out and say, don't worry, we'll handle this, the agent said. But obviously they haven't, and speculating that LIV are going softly with the European Tour, with the DP Tour, that maybe down the line, this, let's not bring out the big guns yet. And then the flip side of that is that there appears to be, there's a line later in that piece, Keith Pelly, the DP World Tour Chief Executive, has been inundated by players who have stayed loyal, asking why the Europe rebels were not treated with similar stringency as the PGA Tour rebels, who were obviously indefinitely suspended from the tour, rather than simply being fined, a fine that would likely be paid by the LIV in the end. So the European Tour, I guess, are in the position where the people who have stayed loyal are kind of going, what's going on here? Are you going to come down heavy on these guys? Is this going to, we've stuck with you. We're all in. We believe in this tour. You gotta step up here. And what are the DP Tour top brass thinking? Are they thinking we don't want to get into a real big war because there might be a détente somewhere down the line where we're all buddies again? So I guess that's. But the Ryder Cup one is probably going to be a big high profile story. Whether if Stenson joins with the LIV Tour.
For sure. There is a quote in that Dave Walsh piece on the front page of the Sunday Times where one European Tour official says, should Henrik cross to the other side, I even looked at the language there.
The dark side.
Dark side.
He will not be captain at next year's Ryder Cup, which would be quite the story. And
the Corrigan piece as well intimates that there is just possibility that with each time they'd play that they'll double up the fines, and so therefore as well that's why LIV are probably holding back to see what's going to happen exactly on it. So it's unedifying on all sides, isn't it, really? Because it's bottom line is about money, but the bigger the names go over, that'll probably raise the big questions.
Hugely significant because I think the Brooks captain the one on top of the other players. Now it's sort of real, and it's like, well, this isn't going away, and and it's getting, and I mean, Rory McIlroy on the other side as the spokesperson, the sort of Luke Skywalker of the of the operation. Like, he's not holding back on the stuff he's saying. No, there's that. I mean,
called Brooks duplicitous.
Yeah.
Word.
I mean, that quote, I know you tweeted it out today. I read it last night as well about Sergio saying, finally we're getting paid what we're worth. He says, we're golfers, we shouldn't be paid anything.
We're already paid way too much. Yeah.
Never mind the appearance money.
One last point just to touch on, and then we'll move off to golf, but it is right across the pages, you have to say, this afternoon. And the attention of the golfing world is going to be on Ireland next week. That is most certainly not because of the Irish Open, which will have 0 players ranked in the top 10 at the event. It's because of the JP McManus Pro-Am on the Monday and Tuesday after the Irish Open, which of the players in the top 10 will have 9 of them playing. There's a comparison here of how the two fields stack up. So, for instance, majors won by field at the Irish Open 4, majors won by the field at the JP McManus Pro-Am 49. A number of major winners at the Irish Open 2, number of major winners at the JP McManus Pro-Am 21. So it really is, I mean, it's extraordinary. Like, there isn't a concentration of talent like it outside of the 4 majors across the golfing year. And Dennis Walsh looks at one of the more intriguing aspects of the JP McManus Pro-Am, how JP and Tiger created the biggest event in Irish golf, and he's trying to, I suppose, chart the discreet friendship that has animated the McManus Pro-Am. I think everybody's quite curious about this relationship that they have. So, for instance, your first thought would be money. But Dennis Walsh says here of the Pro-Am in 2000, when an Irish tabloid claimed that Tiger was being paid his usual appearance fee of $1 million to play at the JP McManus Pro-Am, the tournament host called the reporter directly and a retraction was published without delay. Woods didn't take a cent, and when he won the event, which was £30,000 at the time, he put his winner's cheque back into the pot. So what was he doing there, and why has he kept coming back, asked Dennis Walsh. The simple, unvarnished answer Dennis has is friendship. Contact first made in 1998. McManus, Dermot Desmond met with Mark O'Meara, Payne Stewart and Woods at the Isleworth Golf Club in Florida, persuaded them a few days of links golf in Ireland would be the ideal preparation for the Open. Once they landed in Shannon, they were taken by helicopter to Waterville. A few days of golfing, fishing, dining out, drinking late. They loved it so much. A year later they came back, and McManus first invited Woods in 2000 at the 99 Ryder Cup at Brookline. He was assembling a field, and according to McManus's account, he raised the possibility of Woods dropping by, not necessarily as a player but as a guest. Woods could read clearly between the lines. If you're asking me, he said, I'm coming. Neither of them have elaborated on their friendship, but Dennis Walsh points out that Woods married Ellen Nordigan in October 2004 at Sandy Lane, which is the resort in Barbados, partly owned by McManus, and It seems
far more interesting. It was reported, though not confirmed by McManus, because he doesn't confirm anything, that when he spent 40 million redeveloping Martinstown, his Limerick mansion, that a room was set aside for whenever Woods and Nordgren came to visit. And there are many rooms in that house. I remember seeing a plan of it once. It's an unusual thing, isn't it?
Not very hard.
The one thing you could say is, the one thing you can say about very rich people, and they tend to be men, is if you're that rich and you're that famous and you meet somebody who's equally rich and very discreet and has no reason
that doesn't need
anything from you or want anything from you, and I always think that that's probably why Woods connected so well with them, because here was somebody who was asked him to come along to a thing, do him a favour. It was a charity event, still is, and it has raised massive amounts.
It's totaled to
and that's
40
totaled
million,
here. That's the one thing about it. I think it's
140 million raised for good cause.
I think the last one
phenomenal.
Last one 10 years ago raised 40.
Yeah, so
they're going to break that.
I think there's that element of it, isn't there? That if you're that paranoid, as Tiger clearly is, given his life story, and you meet somebody who doesn't want anything from you and offers you the hand of friendship and the opportunity to go somewhere, and just be yourself and relax. I think that's.
Yeah, I think there's a great piece because, as you say, it pulls back the curtain on that world a bit. I remember reporting at the 2010 one, and being on the fairway watching Woods, and there's a few lines from that press conference, because it was Woods' first appearance outside of the US after the scandal. I never forget that press conference that he did before the Pro-Am. He was a ball of hostility and Ox indeed, yeah. Hostility, just absolute, because every reporter there was told to go there and ask him a question that somehow kind of it was part of the sort of general kicking that he was getting, and there's quotes here, one-word answers and everything, and it was just that hostile, angry, whatever ball of emotions that he was at that time. And then following him on the course, he was waiting to tee off at one of the holes, and up ahead of him was the 4-ball involving Dermot Desmond. And so Dermot Desmond is obviously playing his shot about 100 yards up ahead, sees Tiger Woods. The two of them walk towards each other and throw their arms open wide and give the biggest hug, backslapping hug, and a genuine sort of a genuine expression of emotion or friendship or great to see you, whatever. There was a whole lot encountered in that. I was going, what is that? This is Tiger Woods. This is a guy beyond the stratosphere of any. Very few sports stars are in that sort of realm of significance and cultural import. And I've never seen him, publicly engage with another human being in that way. And so what is it? And I guess this piece sort of maybe touches behind, pulls back that curtain, and it's just that sort of thing of, here's another rich people who don't want anything from me. Show me a good time. I can, relax. And I don't know what it was, but it was really, it really hinted at what the weird and really incredible kind of dynamic behind this whole thing is.
It's so odd, because I feel Tiger Woods must meet billionaires most weeks of his life as well. Hank Haney has a podcast, Woods' former coach, and he was chatting about the JP McManus Pro-Am, because I was, again, you wouldn't think they'd have natural things in common necessarily, or be chatting for hours on end about Limerick hurling.
Yes.
And Haney's pretty forthright, and he was saying his sense of it was, you get treated so well, it's such a good time. That's basically the nub of it.
Yeah, but I think with JP McManus, and this piece, mind you, as well, does point out, which I always think is worth pointing out, that for all of his philanthropy, he's a tax exile, and that's all part of where he is in his life. But there's a discretion about, he doesn't talk. He doesn't do interviews. He doesn't speak to anybody.
Yeah.
He really does not engage with media at all. So maybe that's part,
trust,
particularly that part for Woods.
You're probably right.
For
the golfer who's named his yacht Privacy.
Yeah, exactly.
You might value that in a fellow billionaire.
You would love to listen into a few conversations, though. It would be interesting.
Absolutely. Well, he's going to be there on Monday, Tuesday week. Didn't play the US Open, but he's there at the JP McManus Pro-Am, so that'll be extraordinary, really. And that's on after the Irish Open, which is on this week. that is the golf done and dusted with. So like I said, lots of it in the papers this afternoon. On the rugby front, I have that jotted down next. There's a huge amount of previewing of Ireland, New Zealand.
Yeah, there's massive. The Sunday Times go really big on it. They've got a 7-page special, but it's not just on Ireland. It's on the tours. Well, it's also on the home nations and where they're going and what's going to happen. You know, you could be reading about it forever, really, because there's, you know, and there's a little. They have all the dates and everything, and the Sunday Times have done that. All the papers have, but I actually like the Mail on Sundays because I think Rory Keane's piece about it kind of encompasses everything that everybody's asking about the Irish team and about team selections and all the rest. And then there's a good piece too by Hugh Farley, who would have been down in New Zealand in 2012, you know, and he has kind of a, you know, good memory, good insight into that particular tour as well. But Roy Keane really, you know, really summaриses quite a lot of I think what Ireland are going to be facing and the key issues for them. You know, Kieran Frawley's raised positionally, you know, the first test is always your best chance to beat them. It's all that sort of themes that have is being rehearsed. And of course, very interesting, which paper is it? The Sunday Times point out that Joe Schmidt will not be doing any interviews because his contract doesn't start until after the tour, and that's an interesting piece as well. Is that Peter O'Reilly? Ireland's black spot is the headline on that as well, so that bit might interest people as well, just talking about Schmidt's place behind in the background and his. I thought the interesting was for his first presentation, even Bowden Barrett turned up with a notepad and pen ready to scribble down every relevant details, or perhaps afraid to miss a detail. Yeah, Schmidt's reputation as a martinet clearly preceded him, but it's going to be a sensitive area, I'd say. Yeah, he said, Peter Riley, this is because the general tone is, like in Rory's piece, is Ireland are balancing trying to develop certain players with the value of winning a test match on New Zealand soil. But 2 weeks ago, Ireland Rugby Media received a group message from All Blacks Communications Department. Joe Schmidt would not be doing any interviews before the test series. They were shocked. Peter O'Reilly didn't say. We were reminded that Schmidt's new role as All Blacks selector/analyst, that's his official title, does not begin until after the Irish Rugby Tour, in time for the Rugby Championship. He says perhaps not, but this has not stopped the cult of Joe growing in New Zealand, because in effect Joe Schmidt's been involved with the Blues of late. Again, no precise coaching title, but he's done an extraordinary job. There's been a massive upturn in the Blues play since Schmidt went in, and now Ian Foster, who's under massive pressure because obviously Ireland beat them in November and France beat them as well, and so he's been spending the months trying to convince Schmidt to get involved. I'd say there's a degree of like, get him in so he doesn't take over if this goes badly. A bit of that. Exactly. And so the sense Peter Riley has is that once you get Schmidt involved, he just won't be able to help himself then. And he said that's what happened with the Blues, that, you know, he just went in initially as like a consultant, but pretty soon he's down there doing the warm-ups in his tracksuit and, you know, affecting everything. Yeah, exactly. So Schmidt's going to be there in some capacity and presumably heavily involved, but won't be speaking to the media or won't be to the fore, but you would anticipate he'll have his fingerprints over everything. But that is kind of an interesting subplot. Yeah, and as I said, Roy Keane's piece kind of summarises all the things. You know, how do you prepare for the next World Cup and this Test series with an aging, you know, with some aging players, with front row. You know, there's all kind of a lot of people rehearse the same kind of. Yeah, I think that there's really a lot of that piece does summarise the themes, which is that there's potentially huge upside in this tour for the Irish set up, you know, with that whole pre-World Cup momentum, and, you know, imagine another milestone would be winning in New Zealand, but there seems to be huge downsides as well, because you go to New Zealand and you're not at yourself, and they're absolutely at themselves. You could get absolutely murdered. And I think that's all there, which I kind of can't help but feel to have such potentially big things riding on what is an end of season tour. Like, I just cannot get my head around rugby being played in July. I know. And I know it's not July. I know it's July over there, but it's winter over there. But I just sometimes feel our summer tour guys going out, it always feels a bit like, oh God, here we go. You know, like in November. You know, which is probably what you're hitting them at a time of year when they're much fitter. So that's the thing. It just always seems like a tough ask. It is, and there's loads of people pointing out what's happened before, and the first test is your best chance to beat them, even though we haven't won there in years. But if it goes wrong, usually everything the blues can
they're
come
saying
off.
You're a long way from home.
It's no coincidence.
Especially in New Zealand, do they like to point that out?
Yeah, they're saying in the papers as well, it's no coincidence that New Zealand have chosen Eden Park for the first game where they haven't been beaten since 94. So they recognise as well, let's win the first game and then we're up and running. I'm curious for both your thoughts on what we have here in Luther Burrell, because this could potentially become an inquiry akin to what we saw in cricket, in rugby. Luther Burrell has played for England. He's 32 years of age. He'd be a very well-known player. And he's been interviewed exclusively here by Nick Simon in the Mail on Sunday about racism in the dressing room. And the initial part of the interview is how Nick Simon had a phone call with Luther Burrell about racism in rugby more generally a while back, and his answer was, it's rife. And then they went for an off-the-record dinner a few months later, and Luther Burrell talked about what he had experienced and has now decided to go public with it. And he talks about how, I've been nervous doing this. They met in a coffee shop. I didn't sleep much last night. This is a scary subject to broach. I don't know how it will be received. And he talked about his dad, wondering, are you going to do it, not do it? And he said, I'm going to do it. He stresses he's not going to name names. He says, this isn't a witch hunt. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. A lot of what's said isn't even malicious, but it's become normal and it needs to be addressed. And he talked about, in part, what helped him make his mind up about going public was the thought of his mixed-race children being on the receiving end of what he's received. So, for instance, Burrell's been in the professional game since 2006. He said, things get said in jest without any thought every week, every fortnight. Comments about bananas when you're making a smoothie in the morning. Comments about fried chicken when you're out for dinner. I've heard things you wouldn't expect to hear 20 years ago. We had a hot day at training and I told one of the lads to put on their Factor 50. Someone came back and said, you don't need it, Luth. Put your carrot oil on. Then another lad jumps in and says, no, he'll need it for where his shackles were as a slave. Excuse my language, but where the F does that come from? Some people shake their heads, others laugh along with it. People greet you as, what's up my N? It's not meant in a bad way, but when is it going to change? It's a very, very raw subject. Over the past few years, it has happened a lot. That's the environment. It's normalised because it's normalised because I allowed it to become normalised. I'd laugh it off. I've been a coward by not speaking up. Over the years, I've become thicker skinned. And he said he's at an age now at 32 where he feels he can speak up. He says if you're 20 and there's a hierarchy, you're just told, be quiet. And so it's hard for a younger player to speak up. He says, after a few beers, I have said to fellow teammates, mate, you've got to stop saying that. But it never changed anything. You just get, we love you really, mate, back. If I was 10 years younger, no way would I be sat here doing this. You want to fit in. He says, I'm sure there are clubs that don't have a problem, but rugby clubs don't have HR departments like the real world.
One of the lines he says, rugby's a high testosterone environment with a lot of big personalities. I can't believe those comments. I mean, I can't credit that adult people would use those comments. Do you know what I mean? It's just beyond my comprehension. And all you can, now we don't know whether they're fellow club players, fellow schools players, fellow internationals, but either way, I just can't believe that anybody thinks like that. And it's just absolutely shocking. We were just talking about it and saying that, maybe you will have a situation like cricket in England where it might spark an investigation, or certainly. He says he won't name names. There are some really interesting things. He it smacks of that, entitled, that entitled obnoxiousness that just comes from people who are, I just see themselves as superior to everybody else. And he says rugby definitely has a class issue, and he talks about Ellis Genge. He makes that point. He says about Genge getting messages calling him a N-word would Mario Itoje, and that always has been like Mario. It's always been pointed out Mario Itoje comes from that private school background, But whatever or wherever people come from, it's just shocking. He talks about growing up in a council estate in Huddersfield. His parents worked exceptionally hard and I wasn't given any freebies. Do football changing rooms have this type of stuff being around? No, because it's far more diverse. I actually disagree with that. I suspect football... I suspect there is some element of it, and we see this racism in British football. So we know there is an element of it, but is there more a class element to this, and is racism more pronounced for that reason, perhaps, in English rugby? But I find it shocking, really shocking.
He does talk about class as well. He said you see the rugby culture and you see the cricket culture, they're a very similar class. Guys from these feeder schools, at the stuff that came out from cricket recently didn't surprise me, he says.
Yeah, it's that privileged, entitled thing of, we're going to always follow this course in life because we have private educations. This will take us certain places in our lives, and so we're for some reason we can make comments, and judge other people. I think I really think what's interesting is I don't know whether you noticed this towards the end of this interview, and he says, "I'll tell you what's funny. All the black people I spoke to about this, in other words, about talking out about this, said, do it." The white people were all supportive, but they said things like, "Oh, do you not want to get your contract sorted first?" Yeah. I think that's very interesting.
I think this blows up massively now. If there was a Westminster committee looking into what happened in cricket, I don't see how they can sit in their hands with this.
Yeah, I think, he refers to the rugby culture, and you see the cricket culture. They're very similar class guys from those feeder schools. The stuff that came out of cricket recently didn't surprise me. I think, it's a further example of what you get when you have the dangers of a small, sort of culturally narrow caste involved in something. I think what he's meaning about the football environment is that it is a much more diverse.
But
probably at an institutional level, I'm sure, there's you still have so few black people in positions of authority and management.
Yeah.
But here, it smacks of that sort of, Boris Johnson talking about, watermelon smiles and, pickaninnies, like that sort of post-imperial, lowbrow, public school humour that is a way of underlining that sense of cultural superiority that does seem to come through. It's interesting. It is an interesting piece because you do read it and you're shocked, and then they go on to talk about does the class element explain it, or is it the fact that maybe English rugby is still large majority sort of a white privileged sport? I mean, I don't know, but back to your point, Joe, once you start, and think with the cricket story, was once you start picking away at what's going on here, it's very hard for this to end up to be a root and branch study of what is going on, because if this is going on and there's a guy who's been, he's finished now, he seems to be finished now in English club rugby and maybe looking to play in Japan, and obviously feels ready to come out and talk about it. There's clearly loads of other players who've just said, "Oh, I'm not dealing with it," and that line about get your contract sorted first and keep your head down, make your living, that's been the sort of the fuel for people putting up with crap in all sorts of areas, be it gender, race, or whatever, down through the years. So if this is something that once sponsors start getting involved in what's going on here, this could end up gathering momentum.
Huge momentum. And it's interesting. The only, as you said, Cliona, you wonder what's the perspective of those who are doing it. The only glimpse we get of that is when he says, and this is very similar to the cricket conversation which happened, is when he mentions after a few beers he has said to teammates, "Mate, you've got to stop saying that." Their response is, "Oh, we love you really, mate." So there's this sense almost of actually, not only is it just banter, it's almost even a step further of brotherhood, that I can say this to you.
Yeah, because we're such good mates.
That shows how close we are.
Yeah.
That seems to be the perception that he's on the receiving end of, I think.
Yeah, and his own openness and his own integration is really reflected, because he says at the end of it, he says, "I want to look back," and he wants to talk because he said, my son or my daughter might end up in wanting to be professional rugby players, and it's very interesting. Maggie Alfonsi has said in England that she intends running for the head of the RFU over there towards 2025, which is really interesting. A black woman. Yeah. How interesting would that be?
Well, I put his name into Google News this morning when I first read this to see what the uptake was, and straight away the Daily Telegraph on their website had Luther Burrell, "I've had the N-word used to me." This thing will be huge, and this will be dominating in 24 hours' time. So
and it is that thing that you talk about, that dressing room culture, where it's sort of the people dishing it out think, "Well, I'll tell you how you should feel about this.
Sure,
it's just banter, and you shouldn't be offended by this," and that won't stand up for long.
Well, that's an exclusive. It's in the Mail on Sunday by Nick Simon, and it's Luther Burrell, the English international, still only 32 years of age, very much a current rugby player, and it seems he's gone forward and back for several months about whether or not to speak publicly, and he most certainly has. So it's a 2-page spread there in the Mail on Sunday. Just want to check in at Croke Park. We're at 52 minutes, and Galway are now in control of this All-Ireland quarter-final. They are 4 points to the good. Galway 112, Armagh 11 points. James O'Donoghue, what's been happening?
Well, Joe, it's caught fire, to be fair, in the second half. It started off tit for tat, but Galway got in for a goal. Matthew Tierney danced through about 3 tackles and rattled a rasper with his left leg, hit the crossbar. But then, criminal from Armagh, they left them win the rebound. Whatever you do about conceding a goal chance, don't give them another goal chance. If they have to chip a point, fair enough. But what they did was they won the rebound, slipped back to Tierney again, who slipped it to his side for Johnny Heaney to tap in to an empty net just with his hands. So that kicked us off. In fairness, Armagh had a great response, and it's all been down to Soupy Campbell, to be fair. Every time he gets it, he's either making a score or kicking a score, and it's been a one-man show up there for him so far. First of all, he intercepted the ball off Molloy, came in, took him on, slipped it over with the right. Every other score Armagh have got, he's been the one delivering it in. So if Galway can get a grips on Soupy Campbell, I think that Galway are in control here.
Okay. 52 minutes on the clock. James, thanks for the time being. We'll take a very short break. Back with more on the Sunday papers in just a moment.
This weekend, News Talk have teamed up with An Post Commerce to celebrate SME Day this Monday, June 27th. For more information and the chance to win a 13-inch MacBook Pro, check out newstalk.com/SME to enter.
DoneDeal has the largest range of new electric vehicles in Ireland from Ireland's trusted premium car dealerships. That's why you will find Spirit Jaguar on DoneDeal. Stop by Spirit Jaguar showroom on DoneDeal today and connect with them for great 222 offers on electric vehicles. DoneDeal, for new electric vehicle offers to feel great about from all of Ireland's trusted car dealerships.
Hi, I'm Ken Doherty. For all van drivers and business owners, InsureMyVan.ie is Ireland's low-cost van and commercial insurance specialist. For high-quality van and all commercial insurances, call InsureMyVan.ie.
City Financial Marketing Group Limited, trading as InsureMyVan.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Guaranteed Irish business members continue to sustain jobs and communities across Ireland.
Gifts.ie is Ireland's leading gift delivery company for over 20 years, allowing you to order unique gifts and hampers directly to your recipient. From birthdays or corporate events to personalised gifts and cards for that special someone, there are thousands of options to choose from. Visit gifts.ie and send a gift today. So look out for the G, guaranteedirish.ie. Altogether better.
And Sean's nipped into the bar for a quick chat with the work crowd. He won't stop. He has a match in the morning. But wait, a nod from the barman. There's Guinness 0-0 on tap. The chaps are back on. Sean is in full swing and a fresh pint is handed over the bar. Guinness 0-0, 100% Guinness, 0% alcohol. Proud partner of Croke Park Stadium and proud partner of the GAA.
Visit drinkaware.ie.
Looking for workplace safety training for your organisation? Talk to us at Ayrton Group, the leaders in safety training across all industries. We provide a range of courses such as first aid, occupational health and well-being, forklift, working at heights, mental health first aid and construction safety training. Give your employees the skills to ensure proper health and safety measures across your organisation. We have the experience and the expertise. So don't just think about it, act now by logging on to ayorton.ie. Ayrton Group. Think safe, act smart.
Lidl's inflation-busting offers will put some sizzle in your step. Our Board B-approved smoky barbecue or spicy sriracha Irish sizzle steak double packs are only $3.79 each. Get 6 juicy tomatoes for just 49 cents, and our crispy Italian lettuce packs are down from 99 cents to just 75 cents. Steak offers are well done at Lidl. More for you.
Escape to the country this summer at Mount Wolseley Hotel Spa and Golf Resort. Enjoy al fresco dining in blissful gardens, a woodland walking trail, a championship golf course, a forest playground complete with zip wire, extensive leisure facilities and award-winning spa. Choose a deluxe room or a 4-star resort house. Select from a wide range of special summer packages. All boxes ticked in this beautiful country resort. MountWolseley.ie.
When spending time at our beaches, rivers and lakes, put water safety first. Safe always supervises children closely. Safe wears a life jacket when boating or angling. Safe swims within your depth and stays within your depth. This is Water Safety Ireland. Better safe than sorry. For advice, visit watersafety.ie. Supported by the Government of Ireland.
He's the award-winning journalist who exposed how John Delaney ran the FAI as a personal fiefdom. Now Mark Tighe joins the Sunday Independent and breaks another big exclusive. Don't miss his report on the details of more than 1,000 documents Delaney has fought for 2 years to keep out of the hands of Gardaí, who are leading a criminal investigation into the former FAI chief executive. Only in the Sunday Independent, in print or subscribe at independent.ie.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
You're welcome back. 58 minutes on the clock. Armagh back to within 3 of Galway. Galway won 12. Armagh 12 points is where we are. We'll be over to James O'Donoghue if anything significant happens over the closing 10 minutes or so. We have Cliona, Foley and Tommy Martin here in studio. We'll move to GAA then for a moment. So Paul Kimmage is writing about GAA interviews on the back of a piece Sean McGoldrick wrote last week in the Sunday World, and it struck Paul Kimmage. He was out following Shane Lowry at the US Open, and who popped up there? Only Paul Mannion, who actually was on the show this week, ironically, because he's out playing for Boston Donegal, and he was following Shane Lowry around, and Paul Kimmage was it was striking him. They'd never crossed each other's paths, and it was only as Mannion's retired now you kind of hear from him a bit more, and he was saying on the back of McGoldrick's claim that this has been the worst year in Sean McGoldrick's career covering GAA for interviews. I think the Sunday World thus far have had 3 interviews across the entire summer, and that is the way it's going. And even ahead of the quarterfinals, there weren't press days, or certainly none that the Sunday World were invited to, and we've bemoaned this direction, I suppose, for quite some time. It would strike me the pandemic has been used, never let a good crisis go to waste, as the way to just almost phase these press days out totally. Like, they just haven't resumed post-pandemic.
Well, as long as I've been guesting on this slot, we've been talking about this issue. But actually, I was flicking through the Sunday Independent from the front and reading the GAA coverage and getting past the match reports from yesterday into the previews from today. And there's a piece about Mayo, the general piece, Dermot Crowe, about Mayo and lack of forwards, which talks to former Mayo players. Tommy Conlon has a piece about the tactical aspects of it. Colm O'Rourke, a general preview. And I was just thinking, God, there's no... you never get a big interview, like a big, piece. Like, you never get a big, a player posing, in his farm or in his factory or, in his office or whatever, the week before a game, talking, or whenever it was, and talking about his hopes and dreams. Like, you certainly rarely get it. And then I literally turned the page, and actually crossed my mind the famous David Walsh story, that one of his famous stories back with the Irish press days, when he went to basically embedded himself with the Offaly footballers before the 1982 All-Ireland final. It's kind of the seminal sort of moment of media GAA relations, and it's been downhill ever since. And it did cross my mind, and I literally turned the page, and it's what Kimmage is talking about. I couldn't be in more agreement, and it just strikes me so much. Going to Croke Park yesterday, and just how... absolutely nothing against any of the players, and they're all, we know they all have fascinating stories and interesting perspectives, because whenever we do get to talk to them and hear from them, that's all the case. But how distant they all are, they all come running out, and you do feel a certain detachment of them from them. Whereas if you read your paper, or whatever way you consume your media the morning of a big match, and there's a feature with this guy and this guy from the other team, then you go to the match and you have a sense of there's a whole other context and a whole greater engagement. Like, look, it's as I say, it's an old argument that's been on for years. I think it's incredibly, and not speaking from media bias, incredibly long-term damaging for the GAA. I just think from institutional level, they need to get a handle on this and say, listen, we need to do a press conference, a manager and a player, some way before every big game. It's tied in with revenues, it's tied in with GPA funding, it's there, it's not the end of the world, it's not going to kill you. We need it for the promotion of our games. And if you're going to have this season where the early part of the season is running, competing with Champions League and Heineken Cup and all that sort of stuff, you need to start, tooling up for that battle, because what they're doing at the moment is...
The football season seems to have just whizzed by.
Look, this year is... I don't know how anybody's going to reflect on this year, really, because so much has been squished into so little time that there isn't even room for half the stuff that's there anyway. But they do it... I don't know, Tommy. Look, I don't know. Is it just journalists are obsessed with this? Do the public really care? I think there's a disconnect with fans. I think that's what I think people miss, is that they don't see, they only see them now as intercounty automatons, if you like, who have this life that they live as well as trying to do, and so many of them are students. And that there is a little bit of a disconnect there. I think there is that, and in that, I think what's lost maybe is an appreciation for who they are as people and what they have to combine their professional GA, training with. That's what I think is maybe lost, is that it actually disconnects you from how bloody hard they work and how hard their lives are. I think that's what's been lost. I think that's a real pity. But they still do stuff for sponsors, and the problem with that is the same people are thrown out by sponsors, and they're the big names, and we know so much about them already. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I agree with you, but I think sometimes maybe that's just a journalistic obsession that we have.
But
I'd love to know what the public think on it.
Yeah, but I think public will still support their county, love their county, but
They will.
You wouldn't be as aware of it as a fan that like you don't see or hear that much from your players. But over time, it's kind of a boiling a frog thing that you don't really realise till you sort of don't stop caring about things as much. You know that you know that sort of level of engagement. You know.
Yeah.
Look, I just definitely think with the level of competition, like working in sort of the day-to-day media, like you do spend a lot of your time saying, well, you know, such and such a manager, Jurgen Klopp said this, and that sets the agenda for this game, and he came back and said that, and like it is regarded as sort of tittle-tattle and kind of, you know, a lot of kind of you know, it's not as significant as the matches themselves, but it generates buzz, it generates context. You know, it's part of the old, you know, the old.
The interesting today,
boxing fight game press conference where
whatever the players, if you had McGeaney and Pork Joyce,
what I was just about to say, that. But actually, McGeaney and Pork Joyce, it's a brilliant example of it, because there's been a few pieces today's papers about McGeaney and Pork Joyce, about who they were as players, you know, their personalities, how interesting they were, and how interesting it is now that they're both involved at this stage, right? And you know, in 10 years' time, if there's an intercounty player who's a manager, you won't really, I don't know, have that insight into their personalities, I don't think, because of the way it's gone. There's that for sure in it.
Donaghy there standing beside McGeaney. I mean, I don't know who the modern day fellas are, because McGeaney, you know, Roy Keane-esque, you would think, did nothing with the media, but I vividly remember McGeaney with BBC Ulster, and it was shown on BBC. He did a thing where, like, he let the TV crew come with him while he was doing his training and when he was doing his shopping, and he spent an ungodly amount of money on fruit and vegetables each week. And it just gave you, look, he didn't bare his soul, but he gave you enough to got him interested in that fella.
I always remember was the one about, was it not the McIntyre tunes or somebody else who they used to take the butter off their sandwiches, you know, after training. That's how obsessive they were. But it's little details like that tell you so much. I mean, you just don't get them anymore. They do resonate. The other thing I suppose is, I don't have a lot of sympathy for managers, because I think in the GA the problem is that a lot of managers think they're managing Man United and they're not, and they think they're doing a professional job in terms of media and they're not. Just because they don't have the training even to think, you know, to do it the right way. But there has been such a proliferation of media as well, you know, that things have changed. You know, in Pork Joyce,
that's true.
Pork Joyce and McGeaney and those were probably towards the end of, you know, old media, and now you've got so many different forms of media. And then as well, players can now tell their own stories on their own social media. So we may all be obsolete in a couple of more years' time.
But you know, I go back to the original point. I don't think it's doing any good for the. I mean, look, you look at the big story of this GA season, apart from the actual games themselves, was the handshake. And it is, like, as with Premier League handshakes of different forms down the years, it is a ridiculous thing to be getting in and out about. But people are interested in other people, and we look at the personalities involved, and we're fascinated by. That's why people talk about, you know, we want to analyse the game and, you know, the granular detail of analysis. But we want to talk about the personalities involved, because we're human beings.
And the rivalries.
You see Henry Shefflin and Brian Cody, and there's clearly something going on there. Like, that's incredibly fascinating thing, and it sets up you know, the whole context for the.
I always think there's a thing akin to when people, you know, do you want Joe Brolly in full flow, or do you want like a good solid analysis of what the corner forward did? And there's that thing in Malcolm Gladwell where if you ask people what kind of coffee they want, they say I like rich dark coffee, whereas the blind tests have shown people like weak milky coffee, and that is we want talk to me about going around about Cody and Shefflin. Don't tell me what the full forward was doing.
But actually, and also I think the really interesting thing, and that whole debate about the Sunday game and all the rest now is really interesting as well, because you now can get 625 podcasts who give you the analysis. Loads of former players talking, you can get that analysis somewhere else. But if you're trying to produce, you know, a something that appeals to the general public, as you said, that you have loads of human interest in, as well as the sport end of it, it's a different thing. I draw the line. I absolutely draw the line. I'm sorry, at Desi Farr last night being asked about his captain and his co-captain, I think, missing, and he's interviewed after the game and they haven't played, and he's asked what are their injuries, and he says, I couldn't possibly say. Was that what the comment was?
I don't know.
Philip Flanagan, he played it earlier this morning, I think. I think I heard a clip on the radio this morning.
Even
Philip
though it's
Flanagan
common knowledge, it's hamstring.
Yeah. And he can't
Has
confirm.
to confirm. Yeah, I'd prefer not to say.
Prefer not to say. Now, please, what benefit is that? Because all that's going to create now is a vacuum for journalists to go chasing all week to ask everybody. You see, this is what I'm saying about how they don't. I just don't think they get it. You know, that's only.
Silly. Yeah,
that's
that doesn't help anything.
Stuff. That doesn't help anybody.
If anything does create a vacuum, geez, you start a WhatsApp rumour about someone.
Yeah,
now
the WhatsApps are going to go crazy, and this,
it's no benefit.
There'll be even more rumour in it. And this is where I think that it's gone so far the other direction. I agree with you, Tommy. It's just gone nuts now. You know?
I was up in Derry with Tony Scullion and Enda Gormley on Wednesday. Like, there was such a richness to their stories and the way they did things. And look, it's not what it was, and of course we got to move with the times, but man, it was better. It's just more. It was more romantic, and it was for everybody. It was
for
better.
The consumers as well. And it's interesting. Pat Spillane has a piece today in the Sunday World about going to the matches and his son playing for Sligo, and just he says everybody he met in Croke Park that day at the Tailteann Cup finals said, what's Brolly really like?
Yeah, of course.
Brolly talked to. Isn't it so funny? Like, that's still what people keep asking him.
We're human beings, you know.
Yeah,
we love watching the games, but the talk
between people.
Yeah, and I think as the nature of progress is that they are a lot more athletic. They're not going for a rake of pints the night before the game and smoking a Benson and Hedges at half time. They're not those romantic sort of characters. But they are human beings. They are interesting guys. They're funny guys. They've got interesting careers, different challenges in life, and anytime they do come forward, they tend to be
really interesting.
Really interesting, and but their stories get told by professional people who know how to tell a story, and
it just means when you're watching them, you're that bit extra invested. I think is that's
what it comes down to.
Short version. So 2 pieces on the FINA decision. Ian Herbert, first of all, it gives an insight into how the decision is made. Eamon Sweeney is more giving his verdict on where he thinks sport is moving when it comes to trans athletes. So Ian Herbert is talking about the FINA vote. It was on in Budapest at the Puskas Arena. 152 individuals were voting on behalf of their various countries' bodies. And so the FINA play in Budapest, he said it secured a 71.5% vote in favour of the policy on eligibility, which effectively banned any transgender athletes who had gone through puberty. So they would have had to complete their gender transition by the age of 12. Otherwise, they're banned from competition. 13.1% abstained.
I think that's really interesting.
It is. And also, it was pointed out, and this is the reason why Nikki Dryden, who's a Canadian former Olympic swimmer turned human rights lawyer, she thinks this is going to be appealed, because it would seem over in Budapest that the people who voted were given 14 minutes to read the technical paper that FINA provided them with.
24 pages of it.
Yeah, so she says the whole thing around how the policy was passed is to be challenged. This is not the end of it. This will go all the way up to CAS. So it certainly looks, by the way FINA presented it, and I can't say for certain, but it looks like they were very much of a mind to have the vote passed. And
well, yeah, it is. It was such a dramatic decision, and this is interesting insight into how it was made, if you like, which people may not have got initially. I think it's very worth it. But to show how small the sport world is, and this element of the sport world at that high level is as well, it is interesting, because you've one person saying, yeah, this is going to get appealed in CAS, and then in the article he points out FINA is confident because the executive director Brent Nowitzki, who led Sunday's presentation, is a former managing counsel at CAS, while the expert FINA has engaged on the policy include James Drake OC, a London-based former CAS arbitrator. So anybody who's involved at this level in sport, they know the scene, and sometimes they're very involved in other elements of the scene. So that's interesting. But it does give some insight on. I think the 13.1% abstained is very interesting, because this is such a vexed and difficult question, and it's Eamon Sweeney, I think probably hits the nail on the head. In just one sentence in his piece, he does it, which is, he says, the idea of privileging inclusion over fairness may seem strange. Surely competitive integrity trumps all, but the issue isn't quite that simple. You know?
He's not in favour of this ban, Eamon Sweeney, on the back page of the Sunday Independent. And it does seem hockey, triathlon are all moving to make a move now. Seb Coe is very much on
what he says. Seb Coe's line is, where we're making a judgment about fairness or inclusion, I will always fall down on the side of fairness, but others take a different view. And that's again.
But that's again summarising the nub of it, isn't it? And I remember being involved in a discussion with this a couple of years ago, and a trans woman said to me that one of her problems is that she just wants to play sport at a community level, but that the rules that apply to her are the rules that apply to sport at an elite level within her sports governing body. And that's interesting even, isn't it? That had never really struck me. And I also, somebody in in one of the Irish governing bodies told me that they had trans women playing sport, but it hadn't been officially passed by the NGB, but it was agreed between clubs at the level that they were playing at. They were not deemed to be a danger because it was a contact sport. So it's just such a complicated system. I think Amos Whelan does a very good job, but I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think it's a really good job because they're two sort of different moral universes sort of against each other here. There's sport, and like sport is a bubble in so many ways with its own moral context and ethical context, as we know from all the other stories around, the human rights, etc. But we tend to sort of get really narrow and say, like, well, this is the way things are in sport, and that's where the fairness, the idea of fairness is fundamental to anybody who's takes part or watches or covers or is remotely interested in sport. That it's the old Corinthian ideal, like, but inclusion is underpinning human right value of our greater society that we liked, and we see it getting attacked in the US at the moment. And what's great about Sweeney's piece is he talks about how those on the other side of the argument, they're not always taking a cold and impartial view on it. That many of the same states that are now in which abortion is now illegal in the States have also acted to follow up on this on banning trans athletes as well. In other words, it's a culture war tool as well. So come back to the sort of ethics of sport, and I know there's a reference to Dr. Ross Tucker. Who like Joe, you'll probably be able to put his view into a lot better than me, because I know he's been on the show quite a lot. But I think it's that male female is a classification as such, in the same way that other classifications within sport, and therefore you need to have a line where that classification is drawn.
He said it's like akin to why different weight categories in boxing. It's to somehow level the playing field. It's so that if otherwise, if we just had the human race Olympics, the women wouldn't win most of the events. Is the truth. His sense was, and I'm paraphrasing him here, and Sonia O'Sullivan actually listened to his argument and went big in it in the Irish Times that week. She's, as I speak, sorry, just to mention briefly, Armagh were out of this game. They have scored 2 goals in no time. We might go to Croke Park there if James is standing by, because Armagh have scored 2 goals in no time. I don't know if you're there, James. The lads can try and get James there. So it's now Galway with a 1-point lead. Armagh 2-13, Galway 1-17. Galway were home and hose in this game, and in no time Armagh have managed to score 2 goals. So there's just a point in it. James, you're there now.
I am indeed.
What the hell's been happening? God. Galway were home and hosed, and now we're 8 minutes of added time, still 3 to go, and there's only a point in it.
Yes, the place has gone absolutely mental. First of all, there was a red card for Armagh. Hard to say, it looked very harsh. It was a car crash of a shoulder on Matthew Tierney by Greg McCabe. It looked like there was a bit of a head clash. Tierney was covered in blood. He went off on a blood sub, and McCabe was given a straight red. Straight from that, a couple of minutes later, Armagh had to come out with something. Just as there was 8 minutes injury time announced, Soupy Campbell dropped in a ball, kind of landed short. I think the keeper got a touch on it, and Nugent managed to put it in the back of the net. We were back to a goal. Armagh came again. They got turned over, ball came back up the field and was put over by Comer. At that stage we were thinking, right, there's 4 points in it, this game is done. Ethan Rafferty came out, launched the ball from halfway. Rian O'Neill fetched it. It was the fetches of all fetches. Fisted it across the square, and somehow the ball was bundled into the back of the net. There's only a point in it. This game has absolutely kicked off. The crowd are going insane.
Rian O'Neill just had a shot from distance and has been knocked back into playing. Galway have it, and away we go. Okay, 40 seconds to go here. We'll be back to you at full time for confirmation. 1 point game at the moment between Armagh and Galway. I want to get back to our nuanced and difficult conversation, and I know what's going to happen the second that we do that, but we'll persevere anyway. From memory, Ross Tucker effectively made the point that sport really has just run away from this for as long as it possibly can, and the International Olympic Committee in the last couple of months, last November, the International Olympic Committee got together and said, this is an off-the-record summary, but they said, this is way too complicated for us.
This is a huge
let's just let
hot potato. Let's just spin it back out to the NGBs.
Yeah, each individual sport.
Yeah.
You figure it out and we'll be right behind you.
Yeah.
Up to you guys. And so sport is now grappling. That's why swimming are having this vote and the other sports are having this vote. Ross Tucker said, and it's a point lots won't like and lots will agree with, but he said, from his point of view, this old tactic of reducing testosterone after puberty does not work. The residual benefits endure. And so he said sport is now going to have to decide if it wants to be about, and Eamon Sweeney uses the same point here, is sport going to be about fairness or is sport going to prioritise inclusivity? Because he said on the fairness point, for him, he said it's not even complicated science. He said it's not complicated science that the advantages once you've gone through puberty are not reduced significantly or to the extent required with testosterone levels reduced. So he said from a scientific point of view, this is very clear cut. But if we talk about sport in terms of society, what it's meant to represent, then that's where we have to have an incredibly complicated conversation. And I followed Ross Tucker for a long time, you know, because just on sports science alone. Yeah. But there are also sports scientists who say differently from him, and that's what I find very confusing. Is that there are different experts saying different things, and also saying different things in relation to, you know, endurance sport and power sport and different things. And that's where the masses count. What chance do we have if the science disagrees? You know, and I heard Ken Early make the point during the week, for instance, like, you know, the masses can be swayed by things like the visuals of Leah Thomas, the swimmer, who was head and shoulders literally above her competition winning, and instinctivly saying, well, that can't be right. We don't know about the science or the power output or what's happened there. We just don't. We're not scientifically trained to make those decisions. And yet it has certainly become weaponized, and an area where I think some are probably the political testing has realised that it is an area where the general public look at the Leah Thomas example and say, oh yeah, that can't be right, and they're on board with reducing trans rights in that sphere. So that's almost
another front on the whole, society's gone to hell in a handbasket. You know, we need to roll back, you know, and everything has been granted.
And so they're probably ploughing money into that further.
And Eamon Sweeney quotes the Laurel Hubbard, you know, the New Zealander, the weightlifter who went and finished last, you know, as it happened in the Olympics in her category.
I saw that, but then the counter argument could be Laurel Hubbard potentially took the place of a New Zealand athlete whose dream it was to go to the Olympics.
Absolutely. So that's where the complications is.
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
We'll come back to this conversation. James O'Donoghue, we're just going to line him up now. We'll get the thumbs up from the lads when we can go to James, because Armagh have equalised in this game in the 80th minute and it has gone full time. James O'Donoghue, it's gone full time. We have a draw here.
We do indeed. There's just a bit kicking off here as the teams are going into the tunnel. Armagh got an outrageous equaliser to Rian O'Neill. There was a foul over on the Cusack stand. It must have been 45 metres out. Rian O'Neill put it down and he has slapped it over. Everybody was jumping, fist pumping, even down on the sideline from the management. Now the players are going in the tunnel and there's a full-on brawl going on over there. This is going to be a very interesting second half, but that game absolutely took off with 10 minutes left to play.
Kieran Donaghy's in there trying to separate the players. This is a proper old argy-bargy outside the tunnel. There's players on the ground and it's this is ugly.
I think what happened was Armagh were not happy with some of the Galway play acting, I'll say. They were trying to waste a bit of time. They were going down with injuries. It left a bit of a sour taste. So as soon as that ball was slapped over by Rian O'Neill, which was an unbelievable score, by the way, all the Armagh players were kind of pushing their Galway opponents and pointing at them, kind of saying, that's what you get.
James, this is getting very ugly. Comer there, he's been gouged, I would say. He has been gouged. And I don't know who did it, but there was a hand in his face that properly went for both his eyes, and that has kicked off further around now. That whoever the alleged offender was, several Galway players then went after him. Haven't seen what happened. Kieran Donaghy was over trying to separate it. There will be repercussions from
100%.
These few moments of madness. It's still going on, isn't it, there, as they're going down the tunnel?
They've just gone in. I think you're a bit behind us, but they've gone in, so both teams are on separate sides of that entrance, so I'd imagine that both sides are going to be separated inside, but it was very ugly there. I'd be surprised if 15-on-15 came out in the second half.
Because there was There were two players on the ground tussling maybe 5 minutes before full time for quite a protracted period as well. The linesman was just standing over them waiting for them to finish.
That was Shane Walsh and James Morgan. That was going on for a while. I think Shane Walsh was playing kind of left half forward and James Morgan was stopping his runs. Eventually he was booked, and I think the Shane Walsh might have tried to go at him again just to see could he get him into a bit of trouble. I think there was kind of things like that going on for the whole second half. It just turned a bit cynical. I think that's why Armagh were upset. Now, they did react badly there though, but there is going to be an edge to this game when the extra time starts.
Wow, there sure will. I mean, what does a referee do in that instance, I wonder? Do they go down and review footage, or do they hand out red cards or yellow cards? It remains to be seen. We have extra time here as well. I mean, that's the other aspect.
I think it's whatever they can see between the umpires, the linesman and the referee, see if they could see anything. Often in these situations, so much is going on. How would you pinpoint one or two incidents? You could send off two of one team and there could be something behind your back. There could be 4 red card offences behind your back for the other team. So it's very hard to get a fair result out of this. But, I mean, you'd have to say that Armagh probably did start that. Well, it certainly looked at it from here. It is over on the Cusack side. We're in the Hogan here, so it's hard to see exactly.
Yeah.
But, it's going to be a difficult one for the referee to see what he does here. I'd be shocked if there was 15-15 coming out.
So your sense is Armagh frustration levels grew as Galway tried to, as most teams would, I suppose, slow the game down, see out the clock?
I think so. I think so. And let's face it, Armagh were absolutely dead and buried. Until that second goal went in, they were in serious trouble. So for them to actually get a result was incredible. So their tails are up, their gander is up. They probably got an unbelievable burst of emotion there at the end, and they said, you know, they're going to take it out on their direct opponent, but then it just spilled over.
I tell you what, the CCCC is gearing up for the week of its life. I tell you that for nothing, whatever the fallout is.
They'll all be rescinded anyway.
They'll all be rescinded, yeah, I wonder. So just again, sum up, because we're going to go back to the papers here in a moment and you can draw a breath. Just sum up, from Galway 4, 5, 6 points up, I think it was at one stage, or you can give us the most they were ahead by, and then there were 8 minutes of added time.
Yes.
What the hell happened, I suppose, is the question here.
Galway went up 6 points.
6 points,
and they were absolutely in control. Shane Walsh had the ball on his toe. He was kind of drawing fellas in, slipping it over the top, and they got a couple of points through Conroy and through Kieran Molloy. At that stage, the game was over nearly. But Rafferty came out. He's put in an outside of the left from halfway into the penalty box, really, and Rian O'Neill has jumped and he has caught an absolute beaut over Sean Kelly. He could have marked it, he didn't. He came down and he's fisted the ball across the square, hoping that someone will palm it in. There was legs being thrown at it, there was hands being thrown at it, and in the end Conor Turbett somehow manages to kick it along the ground. It got a deflection and went into the roof of the net, but then it was game on. There's only 3 points in it. So I mean, that was the real turning point. But you've no idea how impressive that point from Rian O'Neill was to draw it. They were a point down, they got fouled over by the Cusack stand. Everyone was the stadium was kind of humming. Is he going short? What's left? He didn't take any notice of anything. He got his mark, put it down on the ground and slapped it over. It had yards to spare. It was an absolute worldie of a score. So they deserved the draw in the end, but you'd have to say Armagh did not come out in that second half and play well at all. They were absolutely haunted to get the result there.
Extra time. What time is your train home?
7:05.
7:05. Best of luck with that.
Once the Kerry game goes ahead on time, we're okay.
I think everything's pushed back now because they have to give them time to warm up, so it remains to be seen. Or cool down as the case may be. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't bring those two teams out too quickly. You'd say, take an extra 5 in the dressing room. We're reviewing the Sunday papers today. That gouge will be a big talking point tomorrow. I'm not even sure, was it a player? I don't know who it was, but a hand went in on Comer's face, didn't it, for sure?
I missed it.
I know, I saw...
Arsene Wenger over there.
But I saw one of the Galway players indicating that somebody had been gouged with his fingers. He was actually pointing to his eyes, so I don't know.
It was
That's
Comer.
all I can say. We'll see it in slow motion later.
Yeah, it was Comer and
just don't wrap this up and get over to Croke Park now.
Sorry, it was Comer and a hand came in on his face. Absolutely, and you could see the reaction then of everybody. So
it's as bad as I've seen in this.
In a long time.
Some bad stuff.
And it's going to take what obviously was unbelievable, exciting finish to it. Like, it'll just be the main source of discussion now.
Yes. Are you going to Croke Park? Do you have to?
I just might get there now. I'm kidding.
So sorry, we're in the midst of, it's a kind of a difficult space to have this conversation married to that.
Making me feel very redundant here as a sports writer. Far from the action, talking about it.
People listen to
the story of our lives.
People listen to this on podcasts anyway.
I know.
So we are trying, the problem with trying to balance inclusivity with fairness is everybody's going to have a different perspective on that, not least the female athletes, those of us looking on. And the other point Ross Tucker made is, in certain sports, and it's not discussed in Eamon Sweeney's piece at all, is the element of safety. So Ross Tucker was making the point that at the moment you could have a 20-stone male rugby player transition and very, very quickly be participating in the female rugby game, and that poses, in his opinion, significant risk. Equally, in boxing, you could have, in theory, and extreme examples often make for bad case law, and actually bad extremes have been used
this
here.
This is
in
what's
this
happening
weaponising,
here, is that it's the extremes.
But in theory, you could have Tyson Fury transition and very quickly be fighting females in the heavyweight division, and again, does that pose a significant safety risk?
Then you have all the complications of whatever medicine you take to transition. How does that affect you physiologically? And this is where all the arguments come in. One of the interesting things he says is, for one thing, I'm quoting Eamon Sweeney, he said, for one thing, the scientific evidence on trans women's athletic performance is not conclusive, and that's one of the complications. And then for another, he says the loudest opponents of trans women in women's sport have an unfortunate tendency towards hyperbole, and that's probably, there's an element of truth in that as well.
Yes,
I think,
absolutely.
And he quotes Megan Rapinoe, the American soccer player who's gay and is always obviously advocating for LGBT rights. But she was saying the notion that trans children are being told that they're gross and they're different and evil and sinful and they can't play sports with their friends that they grew up with.
Yeah,
that's where you have to. And he has the stat that only 13% of trans students in America participate in sport. So he's saying decisions like the one Fianna took might be defended as unavoidable from the point of view of fairness, but from the point of view of inclusion, they're a tragedy.
And it's funny.
That's the nub of it.
I was talking to someone who was at a soccer coaching kind of festival, I suppose, and there were maybe a couple of hundred kids there. And as the competition increased, parents started getting more and more involved and all that kind of thing. And somebody stood up effectively and said, of the 100 kids here, none of these kids are playing the Premier League. Can everyone just relax? And so if you apply that, for instance, to a trans teenager or somebody in their 20s who just wants to be part of society, and let's be honest, none of us here are playing in the Premier League, and if it's going to be deemed absolutely safe and in good spirit, that's where the inclusivity argument takes a massive importance as opposed to Olympic Games.
Because your kids probably have trans friends or classmates and don't have any problem about that.
Yeah,
they know better. Is a good line in it. We've discussed this. I've talked about this for a couple of years, and I find it very, very difficult area to. I can't just find it difficult to make my mind up on it. But what I do know is that it is something that has become such an issue because gender is so. It's such a movable thing now. Transitioning. There are more people transitioning their gender, and that gender fluidity is so much increased in the next generations. So it's not going away. It just won't go away. And how sport deal with it is a very. It's just a huge debate for me, because I understand as a woman that women's sport have separate categories, so that it's fair to women when they're competing.
And certain sports are running away from this for as long as they can, whereas swimming feel, I suspect, on the back of Leah Thomas.
That was such a high profile case.
But other sports are saying, I would think privately, what they're saying is, let's just stay away from this for as long as we can stay away from this.
Well, as I said to you, anecdotally, as I've been told, certainly in one sport in Ireland, they've done it under the radar because it was at a community level, at a local level, and they thought, well, everybody here is happy that this athlete plays here, and it's not a problem for anybody involved. We don't have to go making laws here.
Yeah.
It's like we're talking about that at children's level, you say.
I suppose one of the things that strikes me, and I'm a bit like you, I read everything I can. I don't understand the science.
Yeah.
If someone dumbs it down to me and really gives it to me in a basic form, I can understand the science, but I don't understand nanomoles and testosterone in any real way. My sense is, looking at it, is, and this is the problem, is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to this. I mean, the boxing example that Ross Tucker gave me versus archery.
Yeah.
They're two sports that it would strike me might just have to have very different solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I think that the whole, bottom line of this, if there is a bottom line, is that it is complicated and nuanced.
Yeah.
And ironically, given how complicated and nuanced and as you say, there's so many different angles you can come at it, like the one you've just mentioned, is that if you are someone who has a clearly defined certain view of this, I just don't know how you can. If you're unless you're completely deficient in in a sense of tolerance and an understanding for people on one side, or a sense of understanding of the nuances within sport and the other, that do have to be weighed up as well. There is no other way of. I mean, it's a very good piece. Eamon Sweeney kind of weighs down on the side that inclusion is just about more important. I think, if I'm not. He says decisions like the one Fianna took might be defended as unavoidable from the point of view of fairness, but from the point of view of inclusion, they're a tragedy. So that at a certain point, it's his view that we have to that human rights do trump fairness within sport. But anybody who comes down and says has a cold black or white view in this, it just doesn't. It doesn't bear scrutiny.
And we haven't even looked at the fact that most sports science is based on men's bodies, that women physiologically are different than men. They suffer far more severely with concussions. They suffer far more severely with ACLs because of hip positionings. There's massive physiological things that women have to overcome in sport.
Yeah.
So when somebody transitions and becomes a female athlete, their power levels and other things may be changed, but also they haven't had to go through those sort of things to get to where they are. They didn't have periods for years. They didn't go through all of that. It's just so complicated. I find it very difficult to.
No, it is very difficult, and
But I think what has to happen is that people have to be allowed to hear each other's opinions.
I was just going to say the most disappointing aspect is how toxic it's become so quickly.
Yeah.
People now tread carefully and don't know what to say it because it's just so ugly. But as you said, it's the people outside protesting with such certainty either way that would confuse you the most in some respects.
And I'm conscious, even just as we're speaking, there are football boots behind you with rainbow laces, and for so long people had to, LGBT people had to suffer so much in sport, and now they don't have to, I hope, and I think it's getting better for men as well. You just would hope that this can be dealt with as sanely as possible and as kindly as possible, whatever happens.
Eamon Sweeney there, back page of the Sunday Independent, and then Ian Herbert's piece is more on what happened at that Fianna vote while we were talking there. So we'll go back to James O'Donoghue in just a moment, but the two teams seem to be on the pitch. Paul Joyce is in a fairly extended conversation with the referee. Tommy, I know while we were talking there, you did see the alleged gouge. I mean, I don't know if alleged needs to be used, to be honest. What was your read of what happened there?
Yeah, it looked like either a member of the Armagh backroom staff or a non-tall player involved. It was pretty blatant. I mean, I'm not going to second guess the workings of the CCCC given what's happened in recent months. I don't know. I guess I can imagine that you're talking about this being in the papers in the week to come. I'd imagine one of the angles that somebody might take is that if you keep undermining the disciplinary process, and if it keeps failing to address these issues, then there's no barrier for things like this to happen again. Not that you're ever going to stamp out, I guess, rows and rammies at full time in GA matches, but I mean that was pretty shocking.
It was. James O'Donoghue, you're still in Croke Park, I presume?
Yes, still here. Galway Road on the field. Joyce has just had a good interaction with the referee. I think he was trying to tell him exactly what happened. The referee wasn't listening too much to it, to be fair. Galway are just in the huddle now with Joyce giving him a teen talk. No sign of Armagh yet.
Certainly the body language of Joyce and Galway was one of aggrievement. We've been wronged here and you need to do something about referee. That was my sense of that conversation without hearing the actual words.
It is, but that's dangerous for Galway. Galway need to now concentrate on winning this match. If they have this as an excuse to kind of roll over at this stage. Armagh will come out firing here. Galway have to put this into their back of their mind. Whatever did happen over there, as I said, it's very far away from us under the Cusack. We're the Hogan. Whatever did happen over there, they have to park it until after the game. The ref is going to do what he has to do. Galway need to clear that from their heads and go and play this extra time and now win the game again.
And you don't have a TV screen in front of you? You haven't seen the incident?
No, with all the screens and the replays, they didn't show anything. Here come Armagh now. They're getting a good reception. Galway still in the huddle. They're not actually going into their positions just yet. I presume the referee is going to take action now.
Oh, I see. So we may be about to see action. That remains to be seen potentially. The Armagh cheer, largely because there's more Armagh fans in the stadium than most. So we'll see if there is any action. You're counting 15 Galway players.
There's more than that at the moment, because even the Galway management have stayed on the field at the minute. And the Armagh management, everyone is just expecting the referee here to make some hard calls. Like, no one's lined up in their position, so I presume the referee is going to make his calls and then they're going to toss.
Well, we'll stay with you, because it's hard to predict what's going to happen here. So we're just getting the wide shot now. As you say, no players in their positions and plenty of backroom staff still on the pitch, and referee is talking to the Galway fullback, and I'm not sure who else has been called in there for Armagh, but the referee talking to Galway player and Armagh player at the moment.
Yeah. Is that Nugent in the middle? It is. Is it Nugent he's talking to?
Number 13.
Yeah, he's joint captain for Armagh. I think he's pulled in the captains.
2 captains.
He sent them both off. Oh. Okay, so Sean Kelly gone and Aidan Nugent gone so far.
Yeah, we're just seeing straight red cards to both.
Straight reds. No surprises. The crowd didn't even have a reaction to that, because it's like, okay, that's a start.
Because the Galway fullback, remind me of his name again, sorry?
That's Sean Kelly.
Sean Kelly.
Captain for Galway.
I think Sean Kelly knew he was being sent off, because Sean Kelly was, after Joyce finished talking to the referee, he went back and there was a huddle, and Joyce and Sean Kelly were in conversation, and Sean Kelly was just repeatedly shaking his head in disgust.
Yeah.
So I think Sean Kelly knew he was being sent off. I mean, I didn't see his part in what happened. I presume this isn't both captains are kind of off here, or captain and vice captains off here. They've obviously seen something that both have done.
If he's doing one each, fair enough, but I mean, there was backroom staff, there was subs involved. Like, realistically, after the game there's going to be a few bends, but as I said, the Galway players don't want to see Walt or Joyce shaking his head and saying we're being wronged. He needs to just shake this off and say, lads, whatever happens, let's go and win this second half. Same with Armagh. That can linger in your mind. If you think that something's gone on that shouldn't have happened, you need to just brush it off. This is so important for these teams to just get that out of their head and mentally switch back on.
We're seeing McGeeney going around talking to players and little G-ups, and the referee there even chatting, and they're working on some paperwork. He was all smiles. He was reasonably relaxed given the gravity of the situation. Poor Joyce and Cian O'Neill are arms crossed on the touchline waiting for the game to start. We're seeing Rian O'Neill there is near the referee. He's not in danger of being sent off.
He's joint captain as well, and he's in there. Oh yeah, that was just a toss, so that's fine. No further action from the referee. So one each. Probably the only fair thing you can do in that situation.
That's a real Mayo Meath 96, one from each kind of a solution, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But it means at least we still have a game.
Yeah.
You know, whatever action has to be taken after the game has to be taken. But this is there for both sides now to go and win. At least we still have that game.
James, for people who missed it, that's Armagh down to 13 now, isn't it?
It is. McCabe was already sent off for that collision in the second half. It was probably harsh, to be fair. It was a shoulder to shoulder. No, it was at full speed. The whole ground shuddered when he hit Tierney with a belt of a shoulder. But what happened was, I think his head clashed then with Tierney and drew blood. And when the ref saw the blood and Tierney had to go off, he gave McCabe the red. So, as you said, Armagh now down to 13. So it has to be advantage Galway.
Okay. The first half of extra time, is just starting, and it's going to be interesting to see what the mood is on the pitch there. I suspect it'll be physical. James O'Donoghue, thanks for the time being. So we're underway in extra time. I don't remember moment like that, do you guys?
Not for a long time.
That was extraordinary. I mean,
a couple of league ones, but not in a major championship game.
We'll find out the logic of why he sent off those two players. I presume it's not give me a captain each, a leader each. Like that'd be no way to do.
There was a huge amount of admin going on,
wasn't there?
A lot of admin.
Yeah, very, very odd. So.
I guess I want everything to be above board when this gets submitted.
No, it's like a Garda here going, what's the DPP going to say about my procedure? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very final thoughts. You're here much longer than you're meant to be here, so I apologise for that.
Live sport, Joe. Live sport.
Yeah. You had picked out the fact, we can give it a brief mention, that the Irish cricketers will be playing, even though it's a one-day international in Dublin, against India. So in front of a global audience, that is absolutely staggering. The money and the viewing figures in cricket.
Just amazing, and just like to just think of it. Well, I suppose like there's a passionate audience for it here, but we have absolutely no idea. Jared Siggins, who's obviously brilliant, and just has a piece in the Sunday Indo today, and the money from the television the Star India pay for the IPL is $2.4 billion over 5 years up to 22, and the next one is expected to be 6 to 7 billion, just second only to the NFL.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just, like, even as a sports journalist, you realise how little you understand, and just about, and also about the money in sport and power of television in sport.
Blew my mind about the IPL. The average viewing figure for a game is 400 million on TV and another 260 million watching streams. You've 660 million people watching games of cricket here.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah. And Cricket Ireland will be delighted that every one of its 8,000 seats have been sold already, and live TV secured in 70 countries, especially in India, where 220 million watched the same fixture in 2018.
So you've 220 million plus another 69 countries viewership.
Yeah.
I mean, quietly, the 8,000 people in the seats are watching the biggest global superstars of the week.
But it's hard to think of
in Ireland
Irish sports people who'll be watched by more.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, incredible.
This year, or
it's why our cricket stars are such superstars in their sport, and I think we're not conscious of it sometimes as well.
Completely.
Yeah, and it comes at a time for a lot of change, I think, within the Irish system as well. Is what he's pointing out.
That will do well to make page 6 of a sports page when it's on, and on an off the ball news round it'll be 8th story down, and actually in global terms it's destroying the field.
It's incredible.
It is incredible. So that's Jared Siggins there on page 19 of the Sunday Independent. Any final one you want to point anyone towards?
Just a tiny little thing that I noticed, we were talking about publicity and talking about the GA and everything, but I do notice there's a little nib, what we call in the business a nib, news in brief, in the I think it's Mail on Sunday. Tennis are about to get a Netflix special. They're filming with them apparently at the moment.
Oh, are they?
Yes, it's going to be the next one. Can they do for tennis what they did for Formula 1 and for basketball?
Isn't golf doing one? Or
there has been some talk about golf doing one as well.
They're filming this season.
Right.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
What a good season.
And apparently they've got unbelievable access. And they've been lucky as well in that I think they were following Justin Thomas the week he won the PGA. Like, they were spending the week with him in effect.
Right.
And the word is it's going to be really, really great. Yeah. I think individual sports lend themselves to these things because there's no sanctity of the dressing room. Like the Formula 1 lads are like, I hate my teammate. I can't tell you how much I hate him.
Yeah.
And equally, the golf lads are all selfish.
And tennis has some big personalities as well at the moment. So
it's made for it.
Yeah. So that's the next one
coming up.
Tennis
is definitely one that needs that
for the next generation.
Yes,
well, big time,
because it's got a turnover of players now who are going to be the next big ones. So they need to create a new personalities.
Do you think the average sports fan could name 5 male tennis players outside of the big 4? I wouldn't be confident either.
Never mind the average
and
sports
the female side needs some big stars to come through, because they give on these one-off winners like Raducanu. You think, well, that's the star, and then disappears just as quickly post Serena.
Yeah. So you can see why it's so attractive to some sports, because they've seen this. Particularly, I think Formula 1, and I know from talking to people, particularly the female viewership that they've attracted to Formula 1 has been phenomenal. Off the back of that.
Comes back to our GA point: human drama,
human drama,
and personalities. This Armagh Galway game. If anyone's talking to me about the Galway full forward line at full time, how did Galway win this game? We don't care. There is going to be some fallout from this. Goodness me, just seeing the replay there. Gouge looked bad in real time, and it looked worse again in replay. So, and how the referee has picked out just 2 players, unless they were the 2 that started their kerfuffle, and
maybe they were the 2.
We were just saying. I mean, the difficulty have been 2 things here three things here: being a referee, being a trying to get your team back down here, and the work of a sports psych who does so much with teams before matches. But imagine having that scenario, and you have to get them back down there and bring everybody reset and back down and go back out and play football.
I have seen people echoing the 1996 Mayo Meath situation, where it's red card each. All right, let's get on with it.
Looks a bit like that, doesn't it?
It does, but I don't know how do you litigate a situation like that in the heat of the moment. But you have to be seen to do something.
Yeah,
and I mean, he probably wasn't wrong to do what he did. Didn't see the incident, but I mean, he presumably saw enough, and look, leave it to the authorities to get to the bottom of it.
But there isn't a pitch in Ireland that has more TV cameras on it anyway than that one. You know what I mean? That's one of the problems sometimes with these instances, that you get a very nuanced view of it from a particular television angle, but there has to be multiple angles there, surely.
Well, I just hope there was a tunnel cam as well, because I don't suspect they all got inside and said, right, we'll leave it at that somehow. Well, they're 21 points apiece now. We are done. Sorry, this was a long paper review. You're both owed overtime. Cliona, Foley, Tommy Martin.
One of those epic podcast series.
I know. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
We'll take a break.
Thanks.
Off the ball.